سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قال الله تعالى في شأن حبيبه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه على سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So, inshallah, today we'll talk about Imam Muhammad Taqi. Last week we spoke about his father, Imam Ali Rida, alayhi salam. And so, as I've been saying, and a point that I'll keep reiterating is, the khutbah that Imam Zain al-Abidin gives in Damascus. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has distinguished Ahlul Bayt with 6 characteristics. Ilm, knowledge. And here, knowledge is not just confined to what we think of in the books. This is ilm ladunni, ilm zahiri, ilm batini, the hidden knowledge, the apparent knowledge, all forms of knowledge. Hilm, which is forbearance, which includes sabr and patience, and dealing with with all of the difficulties that come upon you without complaining to Allah. Sakhawat, or generosity. And we see that these are people who give not only when times are good, but also when times are hard. Not only when they have plenty, but also when they have absolutely nothing. There's a saying here that, he'll give you the shirt off his back. These are people who literally will give you the shirt off their back. They'll give you the food off their plate, even if that's all they have. Fasad, which is eloquence. And there is no comparison to their level of eloquence and how they use the words to explain things to the people. Where one word has so many different meanings, and each meaning applies in so many different ways. And this is one of the interesting things. That question came out, about Imam Musa Qadim. He didn't even say a word. He just said a letter, one letter. And that one letter meant so many different things. He said Jim. So, when Harun Rashid was planning on arresting him and killing him and his supporters, all he said was Jim. And so some of his students, they ran off into the mountains, Jabal, from Jim. Some of the students, exiled themselves to foreign lands, Jilawatan. And Bahlul, of course, made himself crazy, Junoon, in appearance. In reality, he was the most intelligent of all of those around him. So again, their eloquence, and then shaja'at, their courage. Even when they know, that they won't be coming back. It's one thing to go into battle with the expectation of coming back. It's a totally different thing to go into battle knowing you're not coming back, and still standing firm in your position. So and then the last one is love in the hearts of the people for them. And this is what the kings feared the most. And we'll come to this point as well later, inshallah. But this is what the rulers and the kings feared the most. was, the kings may have ruled over people's bodies, but these were the people who were ruling over people's hearts. So again, these 6 characteristics Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given Ahlul Bayt. This is part of their inheritance. Okay? And I keep reiterating these points because we'll keep coming back to these points, because these points are very important to understand and to acknowledge when we talk about Ahlul Bayt. So when we spoke about Imam Ali Rida, and the question came up last week, which I said I would speak about this week because that was the intention anyway, is about his progeny, his heir in his position, to his position. So Imam Ali Rida, as we mentioned, he was martyred the year 203 Hijri by poison by Mamun Rashid, as we spoke about last week. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but he did not have any children for a long time. And if you remember, when Rasulullah's sons passed away, what did the disbelievers started saying? They started saying, oh, he's abtar, meaning he has no lineage. His lineage is cut. So he has no lineage, and this religion will die with him. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals, Inna a'atayna kal kawthar. That, oh my beloved, indeed we have a'ata means we have given you, meaning it's one thing to give and still retain some say-so over something. This is ata. But ata is we have given you and you have total authority over this. Kal Kawthar. Of course, Kawthar is also a pond or a hawd or a pool on the Day of Judgment that Rasulullah will give everyone to drink from, those that love him. But Kawthar is also Bibi Fatima, because we are giving you, Kawthar means abundance. Abundance of what? Of everything. But if you look at the context of why it's being revealed, it's more specifically the abundance of your progeny. This is through his daughter Bibi Fatima and through her sons Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So you have the same accusation against Imam Ali Rida. Oh, he doesn't have any progeny, and so these scholars of Ahlul Bayt that are apparent will be gone with him. And so at a much later age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him Imam Muhammad Taqi. So Taqi is from taqwa, so piety, righteousness, fearing Allah. And one of his other titles is also Jawad. Imam Muhammad Jawad. Jawad is the one who gives in abundance. And so these are the titles of Imam Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Musa. So Imam Muhammad Taqi is born the year 195 Hijri. And so this is when, so at this time, so this is 8 years before the passing of his, or the martyrdom of his father through poisoning. When he's young, when he's 5 years old, his father goes for the Hajj. He's born in Medina Munawwara. Imam Ali Rida is teaching in Medina Munawwara, and when he's 5 years old, his father goes for the Hajj and takes him with him. And so when they go for the Hajj, they make tawaf, and Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam is riding on the shoulders of one of the disciples of Imam Ali Rida alayhi salam. And they make the tawaf, and then he gets off of the shoulders, Imam Muhammad Taqi does, and he goes into the Hatim. If you look at the Kaaba, the Kaaba is the cube that we see today, but also the Hatim, which is the area on that side, which is enclosed by that semicircle that we see, that is also part of the Kaaba. That is technically inside of the Kaaba. So he goes and he sits there, and he's in this state, and then Imam Ali Rida tells his disciple, go and get Muhammad Taqi. It's time for us to go. And so when he goes to get him, Imam Muhammad Taqi says to him, he says, you go, I'm sitting here for a while. So he goes back to Imam Ali Rida and says, I went to go get him. He said, for me to leave, and I would just be that he's sitting there for a while. So Imam Ali Rida himself comes, alayhi salam, to get his son. And when he comes, and he says to him, his son Muhammad Taqi, who again at this time is 5 years old. And he says to him, it's time for us to go, let's go, we need to go other places. So he says to his father, he says, why are you in such a hurry when this will be the last time that you come here? So that following year is when Ma'mun Rashid calls Imam Ali Rida to Baghdad, and then has him married, in some narrations to a sister, in some narrations to a daughter, Habiba. Gets him married to her because he wants to quell any opposition. And this is also when he named him heir apparent, as we talked about last week, and then eventually poisons him. So by the time Imam Muhammad Taqi, who stays in Medina Munawwara when his father is called to Baghdad, and his father then goes from Baghdad to Khurasan, and then eventually is martyred. So he, this whole time, is in Medina Munawwara. So after this, his father's martyred, but when he is 8. So he's 8 years old, and at this point now he is on that mansab, or on that position, or that status of being the Imam of the time. And a lot of people have this notion of, such a young boy, how can he be the Imam? Again, we forget who these people are and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And by being happy about them, this is kind of going to digress a little bit, and we'll come back to these points, certain points to understand here. One is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Dhikru salihin kafara," that the remembrance of salihin, those righteous people, is kafara. It is emancipation or atonement for the sins. So when we look at this, this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Kunu ma'as sadiqeen," keep the company of those who are truthful. So simply by remembering them, we are keeping their company. This is how we can keep the company of the righteous, no matter where we are. By remembering them, by talking about them, by listening about them, by simply thinking about them. This is how we now can be in the company of Imam Muhammad Taqi, alayhi salam, or Imam Ali Rida, or any of them, alayhi salam. Is by remembering them. If you don't even remember them, then whoever we remember, that's whose company we're keeping. Also, al-maru man ahabba, you will be with the one that you love. The lover will be with the one that he loves. And so, when you love somebody, you remember them, you talk about them, you do all of these things. This is remembering them. This is loving, an aspect of loving them. This is why we are talking about them. The issue with jealousy is not a new issue, it's an old issue. And this is from the beginning. When we look at shaitan, again, we've talked about this before, and we will talk about it again, and I'll mention it now as well. What was his issue with Adam alayhi salam? Adam alayhi salam hadn't done anything to him. Adam alayhi salam hadn't done anything. And yet he had worshipped Allah for thousands of years, not leaving a place on the earth that he had not made sujood or sajda to Allah. Yet Adam alayhi salam hasn't done anything. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the angels, and he's included in that order because he is Iblis, he has put on the dress of the angels, he is roaming with them, to prostrate, to make sajda to Adam. So now he's jealous. So, why don't you get on? And we see this, and especially with Ahlul Bayt, when so many Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them so many gifts, and because of these gifts, people are, why didn't I get this? Why did they get this? The interesting thing though is that those who are jealous only destroy themselves. Those who are happy for the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given Ahlul Bayt, those are the ones whose levels Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises. And we see this during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where members of Ahlul Bayt would say that people look at us in such a manner. And this is why you have so many ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talking about the virtues of Ahlul Bayt. Why did he have to say those things? If there weren't issues, and there would not be issues. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when he mentions the, in Surah Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the two boys, the orphans, whose, the wall that was fixed by who? By Musa al-Islam and Khizr al-Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders them to fix the wall of these boys. Why? Because their parents, their forefathers, and if you look at the hadith, we're talking about the forefathers who were like 9 generations beyond, up, who were righteous. Because of their piety, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders them. Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders them, a prophet, and not just any prophet, a Rasul, and not just any Rasul, Ulul Azm Rasul. And Khizr al-Islam, who isn't just anybody. He's the one who Musa al-Islam is ordered to go and learn from. He orders them to fix this wall. Again, because their forefathers were righteous and pious. And so Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when he mentions this, he says, and I am the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who is the son of Bibi Fatima, who's the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who is Ibn Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is he having to say this if there's not an issue? Imam Muhammad Baqir, he recites the beginning of verse number 54 of Surah Nisa. أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Or do they envy mankind for what Allah has given them of His bounties? أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Or do they envy mankind for what Allah has given them of His bounty? Who are we to ask or question Allah for giving His bounty to whomever He pleases? And so Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, he recites this and he says, you know, and the people are envious of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that our position is such Ahlul Bayt that everyone wants to be from Ahlul Bayt, but we don't want to be from anybody else. So when we again, this is who we are talking about. These aren't just Salihin. These are the ones through whom others become Salihin. These aren't just the friends of Allah. These are the ones through whom others become the friends of Allah. These are the ones who make others the friends of Allah. You know, so these are the ones we're talking about. So not just anybody. And so when we talk about them, when we listen about them, we should be in awe of them. Our hearts should be full of love for them. That perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might, because of them, you know, grant us from His bounties. So when Imam Ali Rida is martyred, so Mamun now after this, you know, he's solidified his control. He's taken control over the whole empire. So he comes for the Hajj, which is interesting. Is kind of, you know, not ironic, but it is interesting. You will see this even today. You know, when somebody comes into power in a Muslim country, what do? First thing they do, Hajj or Umrah. You know, when Shahbaz Sharif just, you know, when he became Prime Minister of Pakistan just not too long ago, what did he do? Took a whole plane, his family and members of his cabinet and everybody, going for the Umrah. You know, the country is starving, and the common man can't afford to eat, but they're going to go for the Umrah. So this isn't anything new. This is something that's been going on for a long time. So Mamun, same thing. So when he arrives in Medina Munawwara, you know, because you're coming from Baghdad, you come to Medina first, then you go for the Hajj. So when he arrives in Medina Munawwara, you know, this whole entourage, this procession is walking through. And he's riding, of course Mamun is riding, and everybody's coming through. And there are kids, you know, there's a path and these kids are playing on it. Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, who at this time is 9 years old, is also, you know, there. And when they see the entourage, this procession coming, all the other kids run. And Imam Muhammad Taqi, you know, he stays there, he doesn't move. Continues doing whatever he's doing. And so when Mamun, he sees this, he rides up to him and he says that, why didn't you, he notices, okay, all the other kids ran off, this one didn't, so what's different about this kid? He doesn't know who it is at this point. So he rides up to him and he asks him, he says, why didn't you run off like all the other kids ran off? So he looks at Mamun and he says, Assalamu alaikum. Sharif, Assalamu alaikum. Okay. So he says, why didn't you run off like all the other kids ran off? So he says to him, he says, I didn't commit any crime. And the path is very wide, so there's plenty of room for you to pass through without me having to move. And I looked at you and I had husn dhan. Husn dhan is to expect good or to think good of someone. So I had husn dhan that you wouldn't mind me staying here. You're not that arrogant that you're going to mind me staying here. So Mamun, of course, when he hears this answer, he's taken aback. So he says, what's your name? And he says, Muhammad. He says, what's your father's name? So he says, Ali bin Masud. So now he knows who it is. So now he, of course, Musa or Mamun, he knows who it is. So he's very impressed. So then he goes on for the Hajj. So when he leaves for the Hajj, and then after the Hajj he goes, and somehow he attains this very small fish that he's very impressed with because just a size that came from the ocean. So on his way back, he stops in Medina again and he seeks out Imam Muhammad Taqi. And he asks him, he says, he comes up to him with the fish in his hand and he says, what is in my hand? So if you remember, during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Jahl, he comes up to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day with some stones or pebbles in his hand. And he says to him, he says, if you are a prophet, then tell me what is in my hand. Because Abu Jahl, he understands what the word Nabi means. Nabi, is from khabar, or the one who gives news. The news of what? He gives the news of the unseen. He tells us about our Lord. He tells us, what will happen to us if we obey Allah in the hereafter. And these are all things from the unseen. He tells us what will happen to us if we disobey Allah. What will happen in the grave, all of these things. These are all things from the unseen. So Abu Jahl, he understood this point. So this is why he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, if you are a prophet, then tell me what is in my hand. And he has in his hand some stones. Now the interesting thing here is that what's in the hand of Abu Jahl, to anyone who didn't see him pick up those stones, is unseen. At the same time, what is in the hands of Abu Jahl, everything outside of his hand is also unseen for those stones. Right? So when he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "What is in my? If you are a prophet, tell me what is in my hands." If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had simply told him what was in his hands, he could have said, you saw me pick them up, or somebody told you, or some excuse, right? But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that, tell me, if what is in your hands tells you who I am, what would you say to that? He says, that would be even better. And so, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is looking at his hands, and from within the hand, the stones are now speaking. This is one of the miracles of Rasulullah. So the stones are now speaking, and they're saying, La ilaha illallah, that there is no one worthy of worship but Allah. وَأَنَّكَ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدَ Rasulullah. And we testify that you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are the messenger of Allah. Abu Jahl is hearing this. He's the one who's holding these stones. And what does he do? He throws the stones and he says, oh, this is magic. Because he doesn't want to believe. So now Mamun comes to the descendant of Rasulullah, so Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, and he says, tell me what is in my hand. And so Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he says to him, he says that, you know, there are fish in the ocean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that are very small. And the kings today, they hold these in their hand, and they come to the Ahlul Bayt and ask them what is in my hand to test them. So he tells them, okay, you know, what do you tell him? Ask me what's in your hand. I don't only know what is in your hand, but I also know why you're asking me what is in your hand. So Mamun, of course, being very impressed, decides to take him back to Baghdad with him. So again, at this time he's 9, so he gets to Baghdad. When he arrives in Baghdad, the Chief Justice, Yahya bin Aktham, he comes to Mamun. You know, so he's Chief Justice, which, you know, Chief Justice isn't just like these days anybody can become, you know, Chief Justice. This is a man who's very well educated. This is a man, you know, who understands fiqh, knows hadith, knows Quran. Again, extremely well educated. So he comes to Mamun and he says that I want to ask the Imam a question. I want to test him. And so Mamun says, fine, you know, we'll make arrangements. So there's going to be this discussion going, or this debate, basically, is what Yahya wants. And so when they come, you have like 900 seats just for the scholars there. So everybody comes. They want to see this debate. Okay. And so Yahya is sitting in front. Mamun is sitting on the other side. And beside Mamun is Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, who again at this time is like 9 or 10 years old. They want to test his knowledge. Now one thing here also, you know, again, people say, oh, you know, at such a young age, you know, how could he have attained such knowledge? And these are the people who have been given this knowledge by Allah as a gift. You know, this is the descendant of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, for whom Rasulullah said, Ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha, that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate, its door. You know, so these are ones who are from the lineage of Rasulullah. So even when I look at like Abu Huraira, if you look in the, you know, books of hadith, one of the most prevalent narrators of hadith. You know, more hadith than any other companion except for maybe a couple. Abu Huraira became Muslim 7th year of Hijri. So he only spent 4 years with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And yet so many narrations, so many hadiths through him. So, yes.
I was coming to pray, sir. I don't have other business, but I was told I'm incarcerated. You got a person. I thought I was going to meditate or pray every time. But I do have business. I was going to pray, sir. I apologize for something else.
Okay, sure. So you got to go?
I was offering a shot for prayer, sir.
Oh, you want to make it go?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make it at 3, but what, do you have to go now?
3?
Yeah. We might make it a little bit before, so you have to go now?
I know, when they're going to eat, they have to come back and get me.
Okay, inshallah. So we'll make it go about almost around 3 o'clock, inshallah. Oh, you won't be able to make it. Okay. So, you know how to make your salat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can just go in the corner over there. Wudu is over there. Yes. What's your name?
Nasir.
Nasir? Okay. So when did you become Muslim?
I recently took my shahada in April.
April,
I've been my dean my whole time. I'm incarcerated for 3 years.
Okay. So yeah, so Juma Friday we have like from 1:45 every Friday, and then Sunday we have this class that starts at 1:30 and we go till about 3, and then we make Dhuhr Salat. So if you can come for Juma or if you can come for the class whenever. Are you working right now or
No, sir.
you're looking for work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so if you can come for Friday or you come for
Do you know where the Muslim store so I can buy my kufi, my rug, stuff like that?
Yeah, there's nothing around here. The only thing around here would be, the only places I guess close would be.
You can give me my information. You can call
Yeah.
me. It's into me. Please.
Yes.
I give a number.
Yes. Little pen there. Pen over there. There's a pen over there on the thing. See it? On the board. There should be a pen there. I'll text you first. And then,
267 893 9902.
Nasir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, inshallah. We'll be in touch, okay?
Yes, sir.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, inshallah. So I'll continue. So they would do these, these scholars because they were all competing, especially scholars that were involved in the politics. Not all scholars, but the scholars that were involved in politics, who were basically kind of an extension of the government. And they all wanted to have their position with the king. They wanted to be in a good hold standing with the king. So if there was any threat to that position, they would come and they would kind of try to show that, oh, this person, he doesn't know anything. I'm the one who knows. So again, I'm going to come back to that point. Or rather, I'll come back to the point I was making before after I get this point done. So this is what they would do. They would start, they would try to publicly humiliate people. And so this is Yahya bin Aktham is the Chief Justice. Now you have this descendant of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who is a beacon of knowledge. So his position is now, he feels threatened. So that's why he comes to Ma'mun and he says, I want to ask him some questions. So Ma'mun says, fine, we'll make the arrangements. And so the arrangements were made. You have at this gathering 900 scholars. And thousands of other people. And again, Yahya is sitting in front. Ma'mun, is in front of him, and then Imam Muhammad Taqi is on his side. And so, so Yahya addresses Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam. He says, I'd like to ask you some questions. He says, fine, ask. Again, Imam Muhammad Taqi, and I keep reiterating this point, is like 9 or 10 years old at this point. So Yahya, he asked him, he says, what is the kafara? What is the atonement for someone who hunts in the condition of ihram? To hunt in the condition of ihram, when you're in ihram, it is haram. Ihram is from haram, and this is haram. Hunting is haram at that time, in that condition. So he asked him, he says, what is the kafar? What is the atonement for someone who hunts in the condition of ihram? So if you look also, if you ask many scholars, they'll tell you that this is a very complicated chapter in the books of fiqh. And you'll understand why it's a complicated chapter when we get to the answer. So he asked, this was the question again, what is the atonement for someone who hunts in the condition of ihram? And Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he says to him, he says that, after he stops, he asks this much, he stops. And Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he says that your question is misleading and incomplete. It's misleading and incomplete. You do not specify whether the hunter was within the jurisdiction of the Kaaba or outside of the jurisdiction of the Kaaba. Whether he was educated or uneducated. Did he know that this is haram or did he not know that this is haram? Whether he was a slave or a free man. Whether he was a minor or a major or an adult. Whether this was the first time he did this or he's been doing this. Is this something he's repetitively done or is this the first time he's done it? So again, whether this was his first time doing this or this has been his habit. Whether this was done on purpose or accidentally. Did he kill the animal on purpose or did he kill it accidentally? Whether it was a bird or a land animal. Whether it was a big animal or a small animal. Whether it was, did he do the hunting during the daytime or was it nighttime? Was he repentant after doing this or not? And did he do it secretly or openly? Did he try to hide himself when he's doing it or did he just do it out in public? And whether this was the ihram of the umrah or the hajj. And as he's listing all of these things, Yahya bin Aktham is kind of in awe, in shock. Because he himself has never thought of any of these things. And all the other scholars there are all in awe. And then he says to Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he says, well, you explain this to me. And so Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam goes through every aspect of how the kafara would change based off, the criteria that he's laid out. How this atonement would change. And so, of course, everybody's, in shock. And so then Ma'mun, who's, of course, he's kind of pleased because he had issues with Yahya anyway. And eventually he will get rid of Yahya, but not for any good reason. The kings are kings. They do what's convenient and what's good for themselves. And so Ma'mun, he says, Imam Muhammad Taqi answered your question. And he obviously is from this lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose inheritance is knowledge. So perhaps he should ask you a question. And so he says to Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he says, would you like to ask him a question? So Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, he looks at Yahya and he says, if you permit, may I ask you a question? And he says, yes, ask. And he asked him a question, and the same thing, Yahya could not answer the question. And then he has to ask Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam that you please explain this. How is this possible? And then he gives the answer to the question. So he answered the question that Yahya asked, and he also has to answer the question he himself asked Yahya. So now coming back to the point I was making before, is that when we were talking about Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So he becomes Muslim 7 years of Hijri. He only spends 4 years with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And yet he knew so many hadiths of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's known as the Sultan al-Hadith, the Prince of the Hadith. So many narrations through him. When he became Muslim, he was one of the Ashab al-Sahab, those who would sit at the doorsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam waiting to attain some knowledge. But he couldn't remember anything. So he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you say things and I hear them and I forget. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says to him, spread out your sheet. Spread your sheet. So he takes his sheet and he spreads the sheet. And this is something that that everybody talks about, but people, like most things, don't ponder over and don't make the connections where they should be made. So Abu Hurairah, he spreads out the sheet, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam raises his hands like he's collecting something in his hands and he's placing it into the sheet or on the sheet. And then he says to Abu Hurairah, take the sheet, and he takes the sheet and he rubs it on his chest. And then he says, I never forgot anything after that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't simply give him a good memory. He gave him the knowledge. What he's placing in the sheet is everything that Abu Hurairah is going to hear from that time forward. All of the hadiths that Rasulullah is going to say, he's already placed it in that sheet. And then placed and then taken the contents of the sheet and placed it within the chest of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So this is why when he would hear something from the Rasulullah after that point, it wasn't that he really, it was something that it was already within him. When he hears it, now it just triggers the connection. So again, this is Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who was made for Rasulullah but not from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are people who are made for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they're given this knowledge in this manner, and our duty is to follow the knowledge that they are given, to be happy and be thankful and grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us imams like them. That these are the people who we should acknowledge as our leaders, not being jealous of them, or why them and not us. Which gets, one of the points we spoke about last week was the animosity of Ahlul Bayt comes in various forms, and sometimes very subtle. The Khawarij, they learned, and the Nasabis learned very quickly that if you come out right against Ahlul Bayt, then you have issues. We see what happened to Yazid when he tries, he comes against Imam Hussein al-Islam. We just saw what happened to Yahya bin Aktham when he comes opposing Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Islam. And this is at this young age. And so, all of this we need to keep in mind to understand who these people are and why we need to know them and to love them. And be grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has connected us to them. Again, these are people who are given this vast knowledge. And it's interesting, like one time this man, he came to Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Islam, and he said that, he says to the Imam, he says that, my father had hidden some wealth. Back then they would hide it, bury it, whatever, so that people couldn't get to it, thieves wouldn't get to it. So he hid some wealth, but he passed away, and before passing, he didn't tell anybody. He passed away, and now I'm looking for this wealth, and I can't find the wealth. So what do I do? So Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Islam, he tells him, he says, look, you go tonight when you make your Salat al-Isha, and you make the various Salat, then before you go to bed, recite Durood Sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He didn't tell him specifically, he says, send salawat on Rasulullah 100 times. So that night he does that. He makes Isha Salat, and then right before he goes to sleep, he recites Durood on Rasulullah 100 times. Then he goes to sleep, and he sees in a dream that his father has come. His father comes and he tells him, this is where I hid the money. But that's not all his father tells him. His father also tells him, he says, this is where I hid the money, and Imam Muhammad Taqi told me to come and tell you. So again, these are people who, even when they are in this world, are connected to all the other realms. They have connections to all the other realms because they are the descendants of Rahmatul Alameen. And again, it is through them that others become the friends of Allah. And among the friends of Allah are not just the humans, but the jinn and various other things. So again, these are people who are connected to all of this in so many different ways. And it should be a source of gratitude and pride for us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to acknowledge them, has allowed us to try to love them and to try to follow them. Any questions to this point? Okay, good. So, as we mentioned, Ma'mun, in addition to trying to quell any opposition, one of the other reasons for trying to get close to this family for him isn't the normal reason, because let's say that, one of his daughters is married into this family, and then they have a son, well, he becomes the grandfather of that son. So now he can try to sway opinion and also use that as leverage over these people. But these aren't people who you can sway opinion or have leverage over, because their whole objective is the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger. So it doesn't matter who's in that way, it makes no difference for them. But Ma'mun, of course, didn't understand this. So at this point, Imam Muhammad Taqi, he has him betrothed to one of his daughters. Betrothed means, because it's not a common word anymore, so for the younger generations, betrothed means that when they come of age, they'll get married. Means that she's going to marry her, and this has been decided, and then later they'll get married on, when they're old enough. So that's betrothed. And this was a common thing in the past. Actually, it was a common thing globally until the past, 100 years, actually the past 75 years, and a common thing in certain places even today. Okay. So he's after this. The other thing that we have to understand here is Imam Muhammad Taqi is dealing with Ma'mun, even though he knows what he did to his father. Of course, he conveniently passed away, but it's understood he was poisoned. Just like we spoke about last week, even when Imam Ali Rida alayhi salam is poisoned, he's still giving good advice to Ma'mun. And Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, even though he knows this is the man who had his father poisoned or poisoned his father, he's still dealing with him, because according to the Sharia deals with what's apparent and what you can prove. And when someone is poisoned, you couldn't prove who did it. So this is part of their forbearance, their hilm. Even though they know, they still deal with things at a different level. Okay? So we shouldn't be thinking that, he didn't know what Ma'mun had done to his father. He knew. He knew what was in the hand of Ma'mun. And not only what was in the hand, why Ma'mun was asking him the question. So, if you remember last week, we also talked, when we spoke about Imam Ali Rida, we mentioned that he was the first to give the fatwa that anyone who accepts the Quran, or anyone who says that the Quran is creation, is kafir. This is kufr, this is outside of Islam. So, so Ma'mun towards the end is becoming influenced by the Mu'tazila. And the Mu'tazila, to understand them easily, would simply think, you would say, if I translated who or what their basic ideology was, it was rationalism. These are rationalists. If they couldn't rationalize something according to their thought, then, this was wrong, this is unacceptable. So the Mu'tazila are the ones who spread this concept or this ideology that the Quran is khalq, it is creation. Whereas in Islam, the Quran is not creation, it is kalam Allah, it is the word of Allah, and you cannot separate the word from Allah. But the Mu'tazila pushed this notion, and they started gaining affluence and started gaining kind of becoming part of the inner circles of Ma'mun, until at the end Ma'mun makes Mu'tazilaism or Mu'tazilats the state religion. So Imam Ali Rida, having said that, Imam Ali Rida, of course, is already passed. Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, after his trip to Baghdad, he comes back to Medina. And eventually would go back and get married. But even before he goes back, he already has children. So he would go back when he's a little bit, actually, he would go back for 21, when he's 21. He does not want anything to do with the kingship. He does not want to be staying in any palace or any place else other than Medina Munawwara. So even with all of the things that he could have come to, you know, it's like Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that I have given 3 divorces to the world. You know, and for those who understand fiqh in Islam, after the 3rd divorce there is no ruju, there is no going back. So he said, I have given 3 divorces to the world. And these are his progeny, so they also have given these divorces to the world. And so Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, you know, every chance, you know, he wants to be in Medina Munawwara, he doesn't want to be anywhere else. And he wants to live this simple life that he does. Kings, again, are envious and jealous, and they see that, oh, you know, the people are attracted to them, which is natural for the believer. This is, again, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in the hearts of the true believers, is their love for Ahlul Bayt, their natural attraction to Ahlul Bayt. This, of course, you know, sends fear up the spines of the kings. And they said that, look, you know, Imam Muhammad Taqi, Imam Ali, they all said to the kings when these issues would come up, is, look, you might be the king of their bodies, we are the kings of their hearts. You may rule over their bodies, we rule over the hearts. And this gets into the concept of Khilafa Zahariya, the apparent Khilafa, which ended at 30 years, and the Khilafa Batniya, which is ongoing and never ended. And, you know, the first Khalifa of Khilafa Batniya, the hidden Khilafa, is Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu Wajh. And this Khilafa now continues on and will be there until the end, where in the end with Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, the 2 Khilafas will merge again, the apparent Khilafa and the hidden Khilafa. Okay. So what happens in the end is, you know, so when he's 21, he goes back to Baghdad. He's married to the daughter of Ma'mun, Fadl. But again, he doesn't want anything to do with the kingdom. He doesn't want to be staying in Baghdad. He comes back to Medina Munawwara. And life for them was not easy, even though they are the kings of the hearts of people. You know, but still, you know, from a worldly standpoint, they live a very simple life. They do their own stuff. Someone who's raised in a palace has a hard time with that. There are exceptions to those rules, you know, such as the wife of Imam Hussein al-Islam, Sherbano. She was also a princess, a Persian princess, who grew up in the palace of Persia. But her love and her loyalty to Imam Hussein al-Islam, you know, overshadowed all of that. And we see other examples as well. But for most, that's not an easy task. When Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Islam is about 23 years old, Ma'mun dies. By this time, you know, you have the Mu'tazila who are entrenched within the government. They are the official religion of the state. You know, just like you go to certain places, you know, like Saudi Arabia, the official state religion is Wahhabism. Even their universities, their so-called Islamic universities, they say that our mission statement is that we are spreading the religion of Ibn Taymiyyah. And having mentioned him, you know, there's some distractions today, but having mentioned him now brings me back to that point that people may be enemies of Ahlul Bayt in a very subtle way. And so when you look at, like, Ibn Taymiyyah, when he mentions Ahlul Bayt, he says that, that the love of Ahlul Bayt is not an option, it is an obligation. So he says this. Okay, but then when he's asked about the Imams, he says, oh, they were scholars when you get up to, Imam Musa Kadhim, and then after that, they were just kind of pious people. And he's making this statement knowing, the debate of Imam Muhammad Taqi, the debate of Imam Ali Rida, the position of Imam Ali Rida having to clean up everybody else's messes in the court, the kings, all the other scholars that couldn't deal with all these deviants and non-Muslims. And so, still knowing that, they still make these statements. Because they know that they can't come out obviously against them, so they do it more subtly. So the same thing with, now here, when Ma'mun dies, Ma'mun specifies that the heir to the throne will be his brother Mu'tasim. Mu'tasim Billah is the brother of Ma'mun. He is the son, one of the sons of Harun, and he is a wild man. And this is why Ma'mun places him in that position, because this man has no regards for anything. To protect the kingdom, to protect his position, he's willing to do anything and everything. This is a guy who, even though he may know how to read and write, is what you would say, like this wahshi, animalistic type mindset. Physically very strong, and no regard for anything. So Mu'tasim, when he becomes the king, of course, the Mu'tazila people, these people are easy to manipulate if you simply stroke their egos, or you give them, a sense of power. And so the Mu'tazila, they knew how to manipulate him very well. And so during his reign is when the Mu'tazila, take off, and now they are also, they've made this the official stance that the Quran is khalq. And not only they made it official stance of the state, they made it a condition of allegiance to the state. Anyone who doesn't acknowledge the Quran as being creation is an enemy of the state, and therefore could be imprisoned or killed or both. And there were many, many decent scholars who were killed over this. There were other scholars who said, we'll just kind of superficially acknowledge it at the moment, and we'll take care of things, even though we ourselves don't believe this, and we know it's wrong, but we will deal with this later. Even though Imam Ali Rida has already given the fatwa that this is kufr. But they take the stance of, well, our lives are in threat, and to protect our lives, we will do this for the time being, even though from our hearts we don't acknowledge this. So we'll say it with our tongues, but we don't acknowledge it with our hearts. Mu'tasim, is also threatened by Imam Muhammad Taqi, like all the other kings. Same thing, they see that, the people are drawn to him. He, of course, is teaching the true and traditional ideology of Islam, which is opposed to the concept of the Mu'tazilas. Islam, even though there are some things that we can rationalize, Islam is not based off of rationalization. Simply because my mind can't wrap around it doesn't mean that it's not Islamic. Who am I? Because the reality is my mind can't even wrap around Allah, Because if I can wrap my mind around anything, it's not Allah. But and that, of course, was not the position of the Mu'tazila. And so what? Shortly after he becomes king, Mu'tasim, what he does is he calls Imam Muhammad Taqi al-Islam to Baghdad with his wife, the daughter of Mamun, al-Fadl. So this is his niece, Mu'tasim's niece. He brings him in. He, in his own fashion, tries to reason with him. Of course, reasoning for him meant that I'm going to tell you this and you're going to accept it. And if you oppose anything I say, then we will deal with you. And so, of course, Imam Muhammad Taqi, being the Imam of the time, doesn't have the luxury of some other scholars who can turn around and say, okay, we'll accept this superficially, but in our hearts we won't accept this. So basically he spends a year in prison and then eventually is martyred. Through poisoning. Again, mechanism of choice for the kings. Any questions?
I have one, but it's not about it's about something that was said during Juma.
Okay.
Juma, towards the end, you talk about I want to say the right word, this misconception, how you said where it's the thought of Prophet Muhammad, he's been found as the final prophet. So thinking that there can be a prophet after him keeps you out of Islam, then you said it's another one that won't keep you out of Islam.
Oh, okay.
What would be an example of that?
Yeah, so what I was saying was, so this is, we're talking about Khatm al-Nabuwwat in Juma. I was relating that to some aspects of ideology that we were talking about before for those people who weren't at Juma, to kind of understand the question here. So he's asking, what I said was that, if somebody even thinks that there's possibility of someone becoming a prophet after, or a prophet coming after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even to think that is a possibility takes you out of Islam. And what I was saying was that, let's say there's a person who says, oh, I'm a prophet. Okay. If I go to him and ask him, well, what proof do you have of your being prophet? And I'm asking that question from the standpoint of, oh, I want to know if he is a prophet or not a prophet. Meaning, in my mind, I've already thought, oh, it's possible for there to be a prophet after Rasulullah. That takes you out of Islam. Simply asking the question. Even if I don't say, okay, yeah, your proofs aren't valid, you're not a prophet, after I listen to those proofs. Okay. So the only way that person can become Muslim again is for him to say the kalma with the intention of entering Islam again. Okay. However, if somebody goes to that person and asks him for proof of his prophethood with the intention of showing that he's a liar. So I know that, okay, there's no prophet after Rasulullah, there's not even the possibility of a prophet after Rasulullah. So I'm not going here to ask him, okay, well, what's your proof? I'm going here to show the people that, yeah, he doesn't have anything. He's not a prophet. That, keeps you in Islam and is a good thing. Because, again, your intention is to show that this guy's a liar, and he's doing this just for his own benefit. And so that's what I was talking about there. I'm going to talk more about that this coming Friday, inshallah, because this relates to the coming of Dajjal as well. And this is why, and I'll mention this on Friday, this is why Rasulullah talked about, the false prophets that will come, and, that will come before Dajjal. That there will be 30 false prophets, and then you'll have the coming of Dajjal. And this is all related. And this is why it's so important for these anti-Islamic or those people that are the enemies of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to push these ideologies and these doctrines that lean themselves toward even the possibility of this happening. It's because it makes it easier then down the road for the people to accept Dajjal. So I'll mention that at Friday again, inshallah. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Any other questions? All right. So we'll end here today, inshallah, if there are no other questions. Wa alaikum salam. Yes.
Can you say the lineage again all the way down to the Taqi?
Okay, so starting from the beginning, of course we have, so I'll come down, and I'll go both ways. So I'll do the first from the top down and then from the bottom up, inshallah. So you have, and these names are so important, as we said last week. You have Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, Imam Ibn Majah, and multiple other imams who tell you that simply, taking these names has within it the power to remove, the insanity from somebody. So we start with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then when we come to the Imam, so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, and then his daughter be Fatima salamullah alayha. But then you have Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. So he, from a numbering standpoint, would be Imam number 1. So Ali karamallahu wajh, and then Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So he's Imam number 2. And then you have Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who's Imam number 3. And then you have his son Ali Zain al-Abidin. So he's Ali bin Hussein, but he's known as Zain al-Abidin, the zenith of the worshipper. So he's number 4. Then you have his son Imam Muhammad Baqir, and Baqir, of course, is the one who opens the depths of knowledge. So Imam Muhammad Baqir is number 5. Number 6 is his son Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, the truthful Jafar alayhi salam. And then the 7th is his son Imam Musa Kadhim, and Kadhim is the one who controls his anger. Okay, so Imam Musa Kadhim. And then you have his son Imam Ali Rida, who Rida is the one who is pleased with Allah, and Allah is pleased with him, and he is pleased with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is pleased with him. So Imam Ali Rida is number 8. And then today we spoke about his son, the number 9, who is Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam. And Taqi, as we said, is from taqwa, righteousness, piety, the fearing of Allah, the fearing of doing anything to displease Allah. And of course his son, inshallah, who we will speak about next week, is Imam Ali Naqi, or also known as Imam Ali Hadi. And then his son, and we may speak about him as well next week, is Imam Hassan Askari, who is the 11th. And then the 12th will eventually be Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. So going back, starting from Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam, he is... Yes. So Mahdi alayhi salam on his father's side will be from the lineage of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and on his mother's side will be from the lineage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And which is also interesting point here to make, and we'll make this point again. I've made it before. If you look at like Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam had 2 sons, Ismail alayhi salam and Ishaq alayhi salam. Okay. From Ishaq alayhi salam, the younger son, you have this line of prophets coming, this chain of prophets for Bani Israel. From Ismail alayhi salam, there are no prophets until you come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we see this reflection here, where you have Imam Hassan alayhi salam and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, from the younger son, we have this chain of imams, right, one after the other. And from Imam Hassan alayhi salam, you don't have any of those. I mean, they're all imams in their own right, but you don't have that standing until we come to the end when we have Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. So Imam Mahdi alayhi salam will be Najib al-Tarfain, which means that he will be from both sides, from his father's side, from the lineage of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, from his mother's side, the lineage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Okay? So, going the other way. So we have, and starting from Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. So you have Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Ali Hadi alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Ali Rida alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Zain al-Abidin, Ali Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, who is the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who is the son of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, and Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. He is Ibn Rasulullah, he is, the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And his brother, of course, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Okay. Anything else?
I'm sorry, so that, you said Ali Naqi.
Ali Naqi will be the son of Imam Muhammad Taqi. So we'll speak about him next week, inshallah. Hadi, yeah. So he's known by various titles. Naqi is one title, Hadi is another title. Same person. And I'll go over that next week, inshallah. And I guess next week I'll also bring it written down on a piece of paper, and I can show it on the video so people can see it as well, inshallah. Okay. Yeah, to make it maybe a little easier to follow. But this helps where you can kind of picturize things in your head. And in order to do that, you have to kind of get away from the screen. So inshallah, we'll end here today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us and make us amongst the Salihin by remembering the Salihin. And may He make us amongst His friends by loving and remembering His friends. And may He give us His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, His family, His companions, and all of those whom they love. And may he give strength and fortitude and perseverance and victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza over their oppressors, and wherever the Muslims are being oppressed, wherever the believers are being oppressed, may He give them victory and strength over their oppressors. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.